Have you ever wondered what would happen if you had unlimited space and money for a roller coaster and just told the designer to go crazy? Well, thankfully, as a roller coaster fan, we have many answers to that question, one of which is Fury 325 at Carowinds. This is a coaster that's so powerful, it literally just snapped its own support in two one time. It also put Charlotte on the map as a coaster destination. So, does it really live up to the hype? Just how good is it? Here's my opinion. And keep in mind, though everyone has their opinions, only mine is correct. Carowinds is located between North and South Carolina, on the edge of Charlotte. It opened in 1973, and was infamously a Paramount park for much of its history. In case you're unfamiliar with the Paramount days, really all you need to know is that they sucked, as they generally didn't have an idea on how to run a theme park. This left Carowinds a little weak when Cedar Fair acquired it back in 2006. The new owners needed to make their mark and add in something special. They promptly added Intimidator, a hypercoaster from manufacturer Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M for short. This was good, but evidently not good enough. Carowinds got tax benefits in 2012, so Cedar Fair quickly decided to go bigger, better, and faster. They turned back to B&M, installing Fury 325 for the 2015 season. B&M had built Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland 3 years prior, and did pretty well given the thin strip of land they had to work with. Fury would be built with more speed, a larger plot of land, and most importantly, experience under their belt. The result was a refined and vastly superior product. I've also got to shout out the presentation of this thing. I live a short drive from Wonderland, where Leviathan dominates the front gate. I also love how Gatekeeper at Cedar Point does it. Fury does this front gate thing so much better than those two. Because it sticks so low to the ground, it's even harder to ignore. And the angles! Just look at these shots I took entering the park. The color scheme, entrance sign, and neon green light package all add to the experience as well. This is a ride that just makes itself known. You can see it for miles, and having it go right over the state line is a sweet bonus. Stat-wise, it's, you guessed it, 325 feet tall with a 320-foot drop. Those are both hallmarks for a lift hill coaster. Featured is blazing speed at 95 miles an hour, or 153 kilometers for countries that haven't been to the moon, which is to say everyone else. There's about 6,600 feet of track. The drop is 81 degrees. There's no metric conversion for that. Though it's a stat monster, the ride experience is somehow even more impressive. When I went to Carowinds in December, I grabbed 30 rides on Fury, in near freezing temperatures. I need to note that despite it feeling great, I can only imagine it would be even better running on a hot summer day. The ride itself begins with that drop. If you've ridden Leviathan or Orion at Kings Island, it's basically the same thing with a little extra height. And you feel the difference from those two. It's 4 to 5 seconds of blissful floater air time, before plunging into sheer intensity. The first valley is super forceful, and of course, super fast. Sure, it might be in an ugly maintenance area, but really, who cares? You'll then ascend into an overbank turn that has a pair of lateral snaps. These snaps are so strong they actually have brief airtime pops, which basically just ragdoll you. Plus, the turn itself has some good forces. I'm a fan of the similar overbank on Leviathan. This one is close but adds a little more flavor. Then comes the valley where the on-ride photo is snapped, which is bizarrely good. It has laterals and positive Gs at the same time, mixed with that blazing speed. And as always, it's a blast striking corny poses for the photo. You'll then head into a descending turn, and this is where the support cracked. Again, super forceful and super fast. It was around here where I realized B&M wasn't messing around with the layout. Much like the overbank, you get another snap which gives a quick dose of airtime. It's drawn out too, yet never lets up. Next is a quick bank turn barely passing over pathways, which transitions gracefully into the treble clef. The treble clef was just composed perfectly. It's a piece of art. It's the crescendo of the ride, where the speed climaxes in its ascent. The intensity reaches a high note as it feels like being attached to a rocket. And though it may feel like the music's over at that point, the tempo just changes instead. Fury goes from being an uber-intense speed demon to a more traditional airtime machine. Fittingly, the descent is composed of lateral floater airtime, tunneling under a pathway through hexagonal lighting. This is a great interaction with the pathways, and you'll often see onlookers as they go in or out of the park. It's also here where the side of the train you ride matters, as the left side is much better than the right. When you pop out, there's an elevated banked turn with a good snap, but it's just too drawn out for its own good. I would have loved to see an Orion or Leviathan type speed hill here instead, because those ones are just so damn good. Next is a good camelback with strong airtime. I wouldn't call it ejector, but it's definitely stronger than your average B&M. It does have a trim brake and probably trimmed half of the time I rode in December, but it really didn't change the experience much. And finally, we got the infamous Helix. Unbelievably, I don't hate it. Even if it's slow, it lets you take a breather and it throws in this great head chopper. There wasn't a lap where I didn't reach my hand out trying to touch it. Plus, the descent brings you right back to feeling all that speed with some positive forces. The finale ends with the bang anyhow. It's a pair of airtime hills which are both slightly better than the first. I was super impressed with these. They hit hard despite the cold. They more or less set the tone of the second half, and set it apart from a second half like Leviathan's. For its final score, on a scale of 1 to 10 with a 10 being elite, Fury gets an 11. In other words, it sets itself apart even from many of the elite coasters I've ridden. The big takeaway from my Fury Marathon is that it's just a masterclass. The layout mixes sheer speed and intensity in the first half, including some nice lateral and airtime snaps. It's so intense, my rides left me sore for a couple days. Was it worth it? Oh, hell yeah. In the second half, there are hiccups, but the airtime moments hit harder than your average B&M, while the Helix is kind of underappreciated. The one thing I could argue it's missing is that classic speed hill, but it's not taking away from the rest of the ride. It also tends to hit in every row, especially towards the left side of the train. Now, is it the best giga coaster? Yes and no. On the one hand, it puts the other three I've done to shame. This includes Leviathan, Orion, plus Millennium Force. Those are good coasters, but this one's great. On the other, I've yet to ride Intimidator 305, also known as Pantherian or whatever the hell they're naming it these days, which looks about as good if not better. Regardless, Fury is the cream of the crop and my number 2 coaster overall. I've heard many say this is B&M's magnum opus, and given the sample size I've had, I really can't disagree. If you ever need a reason to visit the Carolinas, this is it. It's that good. Also, random fun fact, after the marathon, the 2 Carolinas easily became my top 2 states in terms of times visited, having at least 40 visits apiece. Alright, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and share or whatever, and if not, please leave a hateful comment.